Hello, I'm Shreya and this is Decoding Code. In this video, well, you came here to learn recursion, so that's exactly what we're going to be learning. What is recursion? Well, the literal definition of that means something repeating itself or the act of repetition. And that's similar to what happens in Java. So recursion in Java means a method calling itself. And that means that there's this loop of the method calling itself. And it's a little bit complicated to understand before you just see it. So you can see that here. But it's kind of like a loop that iterates through depending on a condition. And these loops need to have a place where they can stop. Because if you have an infinite recursion or the method continuously calling itself over and over infinitely, then you'll one, run out of memory, and two, I just can't find a scenario where you would want to have an infinite loop. There's probably always going to be a certain point in time where that loop will have to stop. To stop that loop, you would need a condition, and so I have an example here, and it is in my util class, so it's basically just getting the factorial of a certain number that the person puts in. Pretty simple. And so I'm making this integer f equal to the n, and then what's happening is that if n is greater than 2, I'll explain that a little bit more later, I'm going to be multiplying this integer by, and then here I'm calling this method by this method, and then the parameter is the n minus 1, so 1, the number below it. This is happening because the factorial is a number times all of the numbers after it until 1. And that's basically what I'm trying to do here. And then else, so when it becomes 2 and it can no longer go through this condition, satisfy this condition, then it will go through the else and then just return 2. And then in the end, I will just return f since that is all of those numbers multiplied. Let me explain it really quickly. So if you first put in 4 here, it would go through this, f would become 4, and then n is greater than 2, 4 is greater than 2, so it would go through here, and then 4 would be multiplied by this factorial of 3. So then it goes through 3, 3 is still greater than 2, so 3 would be multiplied by 4, and then it goes through 2, and since 2 is not greater than 2, it would go through here and return 2. And why I made this 2 instead of 1 is because I don't want it to go through 1 and multiply it by 1 because that's kind of useless. And if it's multiplying by 1, then it's just the same number. So I put it greater than 2, so when it reaches 2, then it just stops. And there's no point of multiplying it by 1 since this is n minus 1. Instead of just n. So that's kind of the logic, and then when you go through and multiply everything, I'm going to be returning f, and you can see that if I go here and we put in 4 and I run it, it puts 24 because 4 times 3 times 2, 12 times 2 is 24. Alright, so I searched up the factorial of 8 and it should be 40,320. So if we run this now, 40,320. So we can see that it works, and it's basically just going through itself. And here, it's just calling itself. And this is very easy because, one, you would use this because it's very compact and nice. We did all of this in less than 10 lines, and you can see that. And also, if something is just naturally repetitive, like getting a factorial of something, it's just the number times the one before it, times the one before that, then times the one before that. It's very repetitive, so it's easy to use recursion to be able to get this. Often the recursive approach to a situation can be easier to read than the iterative one being loops. And also, sometimes recursion is just better fit for the problem, and the problem might be a little bit more complex, so you might want to use recursion. Hopefully this made sense, but I made lay table for you, if you see that over there, which kind of explains how the computer goes through it and how the recursion works. If you look at that, hopefully it makes a little bit more sense if it didn't before, and hopefully, if you try this on your own and experiment and do exercises, you can see that what it does. And it's basically just calling itself, going back through itself. And it's actually pretty simple once you understand it. So, I hope that you can understand it, and I hope this video helped you. If it did, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this every single week. I upload every single week on Mondays. And yeah. I will see you guys again next week for another video. Bye!